Well, I represent the World Evangelical Alliance, which is a global movement of about 600 million evangelicals all over the world, representing 129 countries, and also with advocacy and partnership with Dear Fund, UK, which is a humanitarian charity organization based in the United Kingdom, and we partner together in this whole issue of speaking for climate justice in particular. From the Philippines, I come from the Philippines, and in the last few years we have experienced so much climate disturbance, and we have seen the loss of lives and property and the opportunity for development, which is somehow the effect of climate change. The greatest typhoon that ever hit this planet Earth, Typhoon Haiyan, about more than 2 years ago, is a testimony that we need to work together in order that we can make sure that we will not have what Pope Francis calls suicide. So we need to work together.
So would you say that the most developed country has a duty to the less developed country like Philippines?
Yes, because speaking of climate justice, the Philippines and other developing countries are the least emitters of carbon emitters, and yet we are the most vulnerable in terms of the effect of these climate changes. Therefore, we call on the more developed countries who are actually doing some more emissions, greater emissions of carbon that destroys our ozone layer, that brings some of this heating of the atmosphere and this climate changes. The bigger countries have a responsibility, in fact, moral responsibility, to be able to help not only their own countries but even the rest of the world. So climate justice is one of the things that we would like to speak about.
Okay, and how the negotiators can make social justice and, I would say, climate justice real in terms of negotiations?
Well, number one, for the different bigger countries, in order to make a commitment to reduce their carbon emissions, try to have a more simpler lifestyle in order that others could simply live. Not only that, what they have in terms of their economic prosperity, then they can contribute to the climate green fund, so that contribution to the climate green fund could help the other developing countries have more resiliency, have more preparation, so that the adverse effects of climate changes will be mitigated in their lives.
So this is your big expectation, that the most developed country give enough money to the poorest country to help them to develop a low carbon economy and make them able to develop anyway.
And I think that is already happening. Yesterday, in the opening of the COP21, we have seen more than 150 leaders coming here. I think this is one of the first conference of parties where at the beginning, the heads of states already come, so they give their policy statements, commitments, and now for that actually strengthens the negotiators, so that hopefully within this week and the next week we'll be able to really have a very comprehensive, as well as we would say binding negotiations or agreement that will be able to bring about taking care of this universe that God has given to us.
So you're optimistic this COP can be different than the 20 previous COP?
I'm very optimistic that this will be better. There are signs of hope because everyone is feeling the dangers, of having this climate or the negative effects of this climate changes, and therefore it's not only us in the Philippines who will be experiencing that kind of vulnerability, but many other countries, even their own. In the description yesterday in the Climate Vulnerable Forum, even Washington, D.C. is possible to be denuded underwater if the climate will not stop in their warming.
Okay. As a bishop, you advocate for the climate regulation. Pope Francis has spoken about this in his Laudato Si. Even the Orthodox Patriarch Bartholomew I have published book about the fact that polluting is a sin. Would you say that the faith is maybe taking part of the process, and the faith is now a big factor of consciousness?
Yes, there's moral imperative in relation to the climate issues. First of all, we say that we believe that this world is created by God, and it is a beautiful universe that God has created, entrusted to man to be able to take care of. We are stewards of this creation. We have to celebrate this creation, and therefore faith expressions should be part of the advocacy for climate change. In the Philippines, I have initiated many interfaith dialogues on climate issues. And we have worked together with Muslims, with the Catholics, with the Buddhists, and many other religious groups. When the Pope visited the Philippines in early 2015, I sent him a letter asking that can he lead a global movement of faith-based organizations in addressing this issue of of climate change and climate justice. And I'm glad that he wrote his Laudato Si.
Would you say that religious leaders have some influence on political leaders?
Yes, very much, because the religious leaders have an opportunity to influence their people, and the people are the ones who elect people into a position of leadership. And so the moral suasion and the moral influence of the religious leaders should be taken account in relation to the for the community to really work together in addressing climate change.
Okay, thank you very much for your time and for your answers.